4, whereas Pavel is in the lower bracket, and he's going to face the winner of our next match, which is going to be Jarla and Seiko, which are the losers from the first 2 matches of the day. Jarla probably feels like he only just got off the first match. The speed we've been going today, Sol, but he's going to be back at it now with Seiko with this lineup, and we see Hunters as the 4th deck here.
Yeah, and now this is really do or die time for Seiko in terms of getting into the top division. Jarla is already there. I did mention at the start he's potentially playing for the top as the #1 points earner from the Swiss rounds in Europe. But for Seiko, his spot is still very much on the line up against Pavel's and Felkane's. He not only has to win this match, he then has to win the next match. He then probably has to win the match after that as well. And if he loses any of those, he's going to find himself in Division B.
Yeah, and both these players are just getting ready to go in again. Just in terms of decks and lineups, there's not too much crazy going on here. This is probably the most consistent output of what's happened post-ban, and only in Swiss, but in the weekend as well, across most regions, I imagine, as well. And it's much more of a normal thing here. We're not going to see anything too crazy. We're not going to see the Rogue not get played, which is a weird one. But overall, it's just the Paladin, the Shaman, the Druid, and the Hunter. But as you said, the pressure is on. And yeah, I was wondering if Seiko was going to leave anything weird up for Jarla, as he did leave the weird Rogue for Pavel. Doesn't seem to be the case, though. But it's a tough one. It's hard to judge the players we haven't seen on broadcast till this weekend because of the nature of this weekend being so fast and the matchups that we've seen. Like, Seiko got dumpstered, but it wasn't even particularly overall his fault. Pavel just got him in the first match of the day. So it's not as if I even feel like I can say, well, Jarla's played really good over the past few weeks, so he's looking good to take down Seiko. It's like, well, we saw 5 minutes of gameplay from Seiko. Like, we can't really judge him too harshly on that, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, both of these players are, of course, great players. I was just checking Seiko's Twitter to see if he'd tweeted anything to illuminate us about what had happened in the previous series, but unfortunately he hadn't. I might have to send him a private message at some point to figure out what was going on with that Rogue. But as you mentioned, much, much more standard. It is standard for us. I will echo, I know a lot of I'm awake a lot more than you are, Raven, so I get to watch a lot more Hearthstone. But in Americas, we've actually been seeing a lot of Priest being played up as the 4th deck, coming out in quite a few lineups. And I know there's a little bit of variation in APAC as well as to what decks are seeing. I think we see less Hunter over there as well. But certainly in Europe, it does seem to be the Hunter that's coming out as the 4th deck quite often.
Yeah, it does surprise me as well. As I said, I feel like Hunter is in a decent spot, even with the classes that are left over. For me, it really is just the Druid that is the bit of the risky matchup for it overall. I will say as well, Jarla's Galakrond Shaman is a little bit cool. It is the Evolve package, but he is running the Lurker below, which again is one of the new legendaries for Shaman, but one where I think the card is good. It just suffers from Shaman not being quite good enough to see a lot of high density of play. But it's very interesting. It deals 3 damage to a minion, and if it kills it, it deals 3 damage to a minion next to it. And then if it kills it, it deals 3 damage to a minion next to it. So it's a very interesting card. I think a card that's very cool to see played, but we just don't get to see it quite as much at the moment. So I'm glad it's in there at least. Maybe we get it today.
Yeah, it's very similar to Waste Warden, right? But more situational in some regards and less situational in other regards. Right. Because if you look at common Waste Warden setups, for example, like Glowfly Swarm, boom, same thing, right? You just deal the damage, it goes across and you deal with it. Totem setups quite often, if it's just a couple of Manatides, Manatide Flame Tongue, or just regular totems across the board. Again, similar setup to what Waste Warden would be able to achieve. But you have the opportunity to do it against things that aren't tribal. But instead it's the health break points that really make a difference. And it's one of those Defile type cards that you're going to need reps against to get in your head how to play around it in a lot of scenarios, because you are just going to forget about it sometimes when it's not fresh in your mind.
Right.
And just really get blown out by it. So yeah, I think it's a really cool tech.
Yeah, board positioning is pretty important when you put that into play. And also there's a double Waste Warden in the list. And I think that might sound like a little bit of overkill, but it's also a nod to, well, the deck is an evolved deck. So Waste Warden is a high mana cost, low statted minion, which is the general, the box you need to tick on the form you need to fill out if you want to make it into evolve as a minion. So it looks a bit over the top, but if it's ever a deck you're going to put 2 Waste Wardens in, I feel like it is going to be the Evolved Shaman.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of tech cards you can carry in Evolve Shaman. Just the mere fact they're playing Novice Engineer, for example, which is
Right.
just a really bad card in a lot of versions of the decks. But if you can upgrade it into a 3-drop quite consistently, then great. And that card really needs card draw anyway. So I think tech cards do kind of have somewhat of a natural home in that deck. But we're just getting word that it sounds like our game one is going to be, once again, Raven's very favorite thing in the entire world, a Hunter Mirror.
Yes, it is, and I'm just checking out the list. I do recall Jarla's. I believe he did play it in his first match of the day because he has the Swarm of Locust play we talked about with the Varanus. I am just going to have a quick, brief glance over at Seiko's list, if I can see it. I cannot. 1 second. Okay, talk about something else for a minute while I load Seiko's list. I have a slight technical issue on my end.
So I am curious about the way the hunters have been built in general, because I do like seeing things like Swarm of Locusts coming into it, because again, it just feels like a decent tech card. Like it's just big bees, right? So if small bees is good enough, then big bees probably makes a lot of sense as well. So I like the way that some of those cards have been included. And I am curious, like you were talking about the hunter setup in Europe in general. I think that maybe this is the one thing that Europe is getting wrong in comparison to the other regions. Because again, if you break down the stats, Hunter is like crushing it across the board in terms of the matchups that are being left up. It seems like one of the highest win rate decks in the format. And yet here in Europe, it's just consistently being left up time and time and time again. For all the praise that I've heaped on Europe for the way that they're building decks and the way that they're making tech decisions and the way that they're banning, I think maybe the Hunter being so common here is the one thing that I don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that. The interesting card here, we did just see it from Seiko, which is the Cobalt Spellkin is in Hunter, so not only an extra dragon to protect the weapon, but also just some 1-mana cards, which when you involve tracking, arcane shot, or rapid fire, is it can give you some nice little flexible tools in Hunter, but also it is just extra dragon craze. Alchemist in this list for Seiko as well, but I think most importantly, at least in this matchup, Acidic Swampoos is there, so he has that double chance at getting a weapon removal.
Second time in as many series as we've seen this, just kind of low power 1-drop played on 1 against Hunter. It's just really important though to deny all those curve plays with the fairy dragons and whatever else can come down.
It's the right shape, nothing that can really just deal the one apart from a dwarven sharpshooter, so looking pretty good so far for Jarla. This is again a card I like. I've been playing it a little bit in my list, but there's the 2/3 taunt is good, not only because the growing effect of its attack is whatever, but most importantly, I just think having the taunt there, like, look how good this is. It just makes the 2/1 a little bit more protected. You can protect other minions, especially the early game stuff, and it just makes your opponent just pause for a second and say, oh wait, there's a taunt here, instead of a lot of the time in the early matchups where there aren't really many taunt minions that come down. Similar effect to the injured Tolve we see a lot of hunters playing as well.
Yep, Jarla's hand got very clunky very quick here though. Finds himself significantly behind. Potentially after this turn. Seiko will be delighted to see no play from Jarla that turn.
Yeah, Jarla's hand is pretty abysmal right now. Hunter is not often a deck in general that you can just say, I'll just stall till late game. Especially not in the mirror. Because if your opponent has stuff and you don't, you just fall way too far behind and die. Although the Scavengers is going to be very nice. That Griffin going to open up the hand a lot more. Be very flexible in taking out Seiko's play, which is probably going to be that Dragonbane.
Well, is it though? Because if you play Dragonbane that you're just going to get smoked by their rush minion here, right? Like,
that's true. That's true.
A better way to play around that scenario? Like, so best case scenario, they got Diving Griffin and it's a 4 health rush minion off the buff. Like, still, just playing Dragonbane there is just kind of a disaster for you, right? In terms of the trade that comes through the other way.
Yeah, in that respect, Seiko could just coin out the Spell King, get a free swing of the weapon, and also some spells that might clean up what's left over, which is reasonably likely, I think.
Still a disaster trade, though, isn't it?
It is, but what are you going to do? Just not play minions? Because that Griffin kills everything, as does, or as is often the case with Zigzag as well. So I don't think he can just go, oh, I'll pass and wait for him to play this rush minion, because he just won't play it. And then you've got the same issue next turn, instead you're a turn behind.
Yeah, I was thinking whether I could ever like convince Zephyrus to give me something playable here. Like, well, I mean like playable immediately, but I mean like give me a good card that I actually want, and just go like double 2-drops instead, which is like less vulnerable to the rush. It's also less vulnerable to like Rotnest Drake on curve.
He could have made a Van Cleef, right? Which would have been a 6/6, which is only vulnerable to diving Griffin specifically.
Yeah, he could. It's a good thought.
The double quest, though. It's a spicy couple of 1-drops.
Is Toxic Reinforcement's a real card in this matchup?
I think so, yeah. I think to clear the way is the harder one, right? Actually get cooking.
Yeah, agreed. I was just kind of ruling that one out, not really thinking about it.
Oh, the kill command. Seiko wishes he could have a beast now.
I wonder.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
Your wish is my
Going for the dash.
Yep.
Yeah, doesn't feel great, but can't really blame him just because he can't leave this 6/5 up and everything else was very clunky. He does have the Dragonbane with hero power next turn and a few other options to help him try and catch up from what we can see is a pretty reasonable turn with double rush. The frustration Jarla has is he can't kill off this Zigzor this turn.
Victory is in my grasp.
I think he would want to, in a perfect world, trade Zigzor away and then play Diving Griffin.
Sure.
Victory is in my grasp.
Still wouldn't necessarily guarantee it though, right? Presuming he's still got like a Faceless Corruptor or something left in his deck.
Is Jarla playing Faceless Corruptor? Yes. Okay.
I have no time.
I wonder if he just swarms here instead. That'd be that bad.
It's kind of what I'm worried about is that like if he plays his 2 rush minions and then like his 7/4 gets answered with like a big minion coming down from Seiko instead, Jarla's kind of struggling and like falling back into this trap of just being reactive over and over again.
This is pretty nice because if your opponent plays Unleash here to kill these, then cool. Half of its mana to kill 3 1/1s sounds like a good trade to me. And this is definitely one of the matchups where if you land the aggro Siamet, and it's even remotely difficult for your opponent to deal with, you probably just win the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Quest and Waste Warden? It's always Toxic Reinforcements because the rush, you can do it, but it's way less realistic than just a hero battle.
Yep.
Do you like the aggro Siamet?
Kind of do, yeah.
Yeah. What is the actual answer? Things have to be traded or nudged in.
Jarla hasn't played his Zephyrus either, so Wind Siamat is actually threatening lethal from Seiko's position. Obviously, we can see he can't have it, but you know, Seiko has to be scared of Zephyrus into Blessed Champion. This is pretty solid. And I was going to argue that if you go Wind Siamat, Seiko might be, you know, even if he did have Dinotamer Brand, might be too scared to just leave it there and go face. Similar scenario to what we saw in a previous game. But Jarla has this play which kind of just locks out that option completely anyway, right? So I guess this is perfectly understandable.
Yep, the issue here is Quest, Unleash, Kill Command clears the board, and that's it. And is clearing the board good enough? Probably not. Maybe this is the time where he just lets go with a Dragonbane. That's very risky, though. This Bone Wraith is doing one heck of a job defending this Griffin who's on its last legs right now.
Moves quickly.
Oof, just gonna do it. What a horrible turn. Jarla taking his time over this one, but I think setting up the aggro Tiamat seems really good right now.
Let none survive.
Mainly because if Seiko plays Bran and just goes to the face, well, he can just faceless with Fairy Dragon to answer it and still have his Tiamat. So I thought that was a really good turn there to just drop the Tiamat down. This is still a threatening turn, but I feel like this turn was only as good as it was because he got exactly offer.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I wanted to see him out for the exact same reasons. I was just about to make the same point that, like, now you've got the extra mana. There wasn't a 3/3 on the board that turn, which there was on the previous turn, which of course was representing extra damage. And then because he had the extra mana with the Faceless Corruptor, he just had options to just Faceless Corruptor down a King Crush.
And like I said, if this wasn't Huffer, I think the turn is so much weaker as well. I think he got away with it there a little bit. But now he's on the back foot. He could have had a Wind Fury Tiamat right now.
Life and hope of
You did see the Rotnest Drake draw, though, which is potentially one of the punishes that you've always got to worry about when you do go for that solo Tiamat on board.
The fate of the world hangs in the balance.
Oh, Unleash the Beast.
Ooh, Unleash the Beast is absurd.
Yeah, very good card, and if you're wondering why it isn't really played at the moment, is there just aren't the slots there right now for what Hunter needs to achieve in the current metagame. It's too slow to be a good anti-aggro tool. You don't necessarily need the value as much because of Zigsaw and to a certain extent, Nagran Slam gets you some extra late game value. Yeah, congratulations to Jarla getting the game there. A really good pick off the end. He didn't play the Tiamat, and again, I think he was still in a decent spot, but I did wonder if Tiamat was just like the soul-crushing play on that turn. I felt like he had a great big window open there for Tiamat. There is a punish for a Rotnest, but I think Rotnest was the only punish available.
Well, that's what I will say, is that there were some punishes from cards that obviously Jarla doesn't have, and obviously we can see that. It's, you know, what we refer to as caster vision a lot of the times. Sometimes when you are casting, you will get tunneled into plays. That, you know, maybe the player will just be like, well, you know, if I do this and I get punished by this, I lose the game. But we can see that they aren't there, and I think, you know, Jarla was comfortable in the position that he was in to feel like he could continue to play around things like Rotnest Drake in that position. So I think, you know, as long as the game continued to go his way and he kept control of what was a very good position, I think any of his plays were fairly justifiable.
Yeah, I think so as well, yeah. Jarla taking the win there with the Hunter. And there's still a lot more to play for. And as we said, Seiko does need to win this match if he wants to keep his hopes alive going into that Division A. We are going to go to a quick break while we set up the next game, though. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.
Hello everybody, I'm TJ. I'm joined by America's Grandmaster as well as Masters Tour Bucharest champion Eddie. There was an unfortunate incident after you won Masters Tour Bucharest where a trophy malfunctioned in your very hands and you dropped it. You dropped it.
Winner of Masters Tour Bucharest.
Really? Okay, so really...
Eddie, how you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing okay.
Today, my goal is to make sure that never happens to you again.
I improved since then already. I won the World University Cyber Games in China.
If you make it to the global finals, I just want to make sure that you are prepared. So, what I've done is I've assembled a collection of trophies. And we're going to make sure that you've dropped your last trophy. I'll need you to put on this poncho. Are you frightened?
Yes.
I don't care. And we're back. Eddie, looking good. Clothes all protected, feeling good.
Yeah.
Are you ready to start the training?
No.
Okay. I have all these trophies here. See if you can catch some and hold on to them. You ready?
Okay.
We'll start easy. One trophy.
Okay. Where are all these things?
Don't worry about it. Next one. Nice. Next one. We're gonna get harder now, 2 at a time. Let's go. Here you go. Here you go. Coming at you. All right, last one.
This one's broken.
Well, sometimes trophies are broken, Eddie. You should know that. All right, now it's time
What are you
for
doing?
your final test.
What are you doing?
You know, Eddie, when you play a Hearthstone tournament,
Calm down, calm down. Don't do this.
you never know how
Don't do
big
this.
and heavy your trophies are gonna be. My training camp is almost complete.
Wow!
We are back and going to continue through the day here with this series of Jarla versus Seiko. This is the lower bracket match, number 1. So it means the loser is done for the weekend. They will not be progressing to tomorrow. Not so bad news for Jarla if that's the case for him by the end of this series. Quite bad news for Seiko as he does need to win this to have a chance at getting into that Division A next week once round robin kicks off. So not looking too great here for Seiko Sol as he is currently 0-1 down to Jarla after that first game.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the kickoff of the series, it's a long road still. Not only does he need to win this match, he needs to win the rematch then against Pavel as well, and then very possibly one more match after that as well. Although, in the process of winning the rematch against Pavel, he will be knocking Pavel out, which is another kind of modifier to his chances, is that Pavel does not end up doing well. So it might be good enough with a top 4 at that point, but we'd have to reassess.
All right, well, let's get into game number 2. Jarla on the Druid on the top doing the full mulligan there. Seiko on this Evolve Shaman, and I think we've gained the mental capacity to deal with any Evolve outcome now that happens from Evolve Shaman, because I feel like in our 1.5 days of casting this so far, we've seen all the outcomes.
Yeah, I think, Bunny's 2 out of the 4 drops that Bunny has rolled or today, which hasn't been many, have been Armet and Nosdormu the Timeless.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you got Cho as well.
Yep.
Did he get it? But we saw Cho, and then yesterday we saw, what was it, Kargath and another Nosdormu the Timeless.
Yep. There is a lot of spiky minions in the game right now, by which, it's a weird phrase. There's a lot of spiky boys in the game right now. No, there's a lot of minions that are just, way above the quality of everything else in an individual mana slot. When you take out battle cries and everything else and just look at the effect that they have on board. Nosdorn with the Timeless, obviously with the battle cry, he's statted because that battle cry is quite a big drawback a lot of the time to allow your opponent to go first. Of course, unless you're Gallon, in which case it's the absolute nuts. But then just getting an 8/8 on the board out of an Evolve is obviously insane.
Yep, whereas in this matchup, Seiko got off to a decent start, but the Crystal Power shut down his Battle Mage. He's looking a little bit slow quite now, honestly, Sol, for Seiko, which is a little bit worrying, because if there's something you don't want to be versus Druid, it's slow.
Yeah, I will say in this matchup it only really matters if they have a really powerful ramp turn into one of their 7-drop bombs, or if they have early Glowfly, which Jarla has pieces of that puzzle right now, but if Seiko has a few turns, like if Seiko can get to turn 5 without anything catastrophic happening on the Druid side, which is a big ask, I know, then a slightly slower hand isn't the worst thing. Because this deck can go surprisingly long as you get access to a card exactly like that. You get the Galacrond, you can start to push things a little bit longer into the late game and still feel okay.
Yeah, and also the nature of the invoke, because of Galacrond and Shaman, means that the 2/1s trade quite nicely into a lot of the Druid minions, keep it in check a little bit. But as you did mention, Jarla has access to all of the ramp in the world, but nothing to actually ramp into as of yet. And funny enough, I'm going to go for the wild growth and not try and get one of these overgrowths out.
Suddenly, Seiko's hand looking fantastic.
Yeah, these are the games we've seen Druid lose the most, is when their initial board is actually already beaten on board by the Shaman, right? Even if it is just a board full of 2/2s. Or, 2 attack minions, should I say.
Overgrowth does activate his Bog Beam immediately here, so he can choose to snipe here if he wants. There is the Bogspine Knuckles to be worried about if he wants to take the 4-drop off the board.
Could also innovate the Wrath, but I think that is a little bit overkill. My only worry now is Jarla really needs to draw a very exact collection of cards.
Yes.
Or one of an very exact collection of cards, i.e. card draw or arguably a Mount Seller. So part of me, it's tough, right? Because Innovate Wrath can get him to Mount Seller a bit quicker, or get him to the Overflow a bit quicker. But Innovate Wrath means that if he does get Mount Seller, it's worse. So it's just a weird kind of mental gymnastics you have to do to work out which is actually better for the outcome of the game.
Yeah, there's also a problem here in just, spending a Bog Beam even, just, cuts away Glowfly Swarm as a direct top deck. It's just not really that impressive anymore, barely better than Force of Nature.
Oh!
Well.
Okay. I think it is, right?
I think you just keep invoking.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I know that Knuckles isn't the most impactful thing in the world that turn, but I just wondered if getting it equipped so then you can guarantee a Shield of Galacrond into Evolve, the next turn.
I'd say you're all but guaranteed a Shield of Galacrond into Invoke doing it this way round. Is the Druid gonna kill a 4/5 this turn? I really don't.
Diving Griffins!
Yeah, fair point. Fair point.
But it was the Swarm that was drawn.
Yeah, and you see the problem, right?
Yeah.
With an extra Bog Beam in his hand, great. A 5-minion Glowfly Swarm, okay, it's competitive.
And then a Bog Beam.
Yeah, right. We can see that, Jarla would have got, Giga punished if he had left up the 4-drop with the Bogspine Knuckles down.
Is this when the dream... Well, you could Sludge Slurp it into Faceless, into Mogu, into Knuckles, right?
What?
What to do?
If he Sludge Slurpers and gets Faceless...
He's already spent 2 mana and can't play Knuckles.
Oh, wait, of course, yeah. I was getting too excited about the Mogu.
Also, the second it doesn't matter what the second lackey is. The Mogu costs 0 after the second lackey anyway.
I think that's why I was getting confused with the mana costs. I'm going to be quiet and let this turn play out.
I'm just done. I'm just gonna stop saying things now.
I've seen too many crazy things in the last day and a half, Sol. Okay.
Yeah.
It's getting to me.
No, serious points though. I think Seiko is playing this very well. I think the Knuckles were a bit of a bait the last couple of turns, and Seiko has dodged that bait very, very nicely. Just continue to kill everything Jarla plays. His invoke minions are just so efficient because of the 2-1 rush that comes with them. His board's his board is only getting bigger every turn as well. Like that's the real big point, right? Like it's not like when he bogs by Knuckles, he's gonna run out of minions.
Yeah, and when you play, this is why I like Galakron, the form of Galakron Shaman versus Totem, whether that's
form of Galakron Shaman.
Just because it is one of the things we talked about where this pocket meta changes deck tiers, right? Because this feels like a druid killer. Obviously, this game is unfortunate because Jarla didn't get any card draw, so it looks worse. But you could just do the maths, right? The deck that summons rush 2 attack minions is good versus the deck summons 2 health minions that don't rush. So it just feels like a good deck versus druid. And it's why I mentioned I like the form of Galakron Shaman over the Totem, because if you know you're never going to ban Druid in a million years, well, it's always a good matchup you can run into. Even though that's bad, it's still good, right? Yeah, I was going to say.
It's not that bad. It's pretty medium. Obviously, Ancient Watcher.
I just mean you got 2 bad ones.
Yeah, Ancient Watcher is a huge whiff, but he mouses over the name of the card. Dragonmaw Skystalker is obviously huge for a 6-drop here. Like, thing with a Death Rattle. Egg on the 2-drop is pretty great as well.
And Vincent Phoenixman, not really too great there as a 1-3.
Vincent Phoenixman.
What?
And there we go! Seiko wins the game number 1.
No. We're gonna go back. How by any standard is this 3 phoenixes in a trench coat?
Because it has 3 health. No? That's what I was
Explain
going
yourself, Raven.
Never. It was a
joke
throwaway
makes no
comment.
sense.
Jokes always don't have to make sense. Anyway, okay. Seiko 1-1 now versus Jarla, and one thing I did not see happening this weekend, so I don't think really anyone predicted too much, is I feel like every game we see is just a blowout. It's like we talked about earlier. Every game and every matchup feels, no matter what the matchup is, no matter what the decks are, this mini meta that's been created for this weekend just seems so one-sided and swingy that any player who gets ahead with one strong turn feels like that's just the game. And we see that not only in the results of the games, but in the game length of the series overall, because these are not going that long, are they?
Yeah, it's a problem. I think, well, okay, so this doesn't really apply to like the Druid games like we just watched. Druid's problem is that it just gets beaten up by a lot of these sort of mediocre board-based decks that aren't good enough to compete against everything else. But a lot of the blowout games are coming from the place where the good decks in Hearthstone right now all draw a ton of cards, which increases the consistency of those decks a lot, because, you know, Battle Rage draw your deck, and that's fighting against Druid, which is overflowing and Fungal Fortunes and drawing its deck. So if you're, you know, not quite in the game in the early game, you can still draw a ton of cards, get your game plan together, and if it took you a little bit long, maybe your game plan's like strong enough to pull you back into it. The common denominator between basically all of the decks we're seeing here, Druid accepted, is that they just don't draw that many cards, right? Like, Shaman doesn't really have card draw unless it's duplicating 4 mana-tide totems. The Evolved Shaman's only playing like a couple of Novice Engineers, sometimes Farsights instead, like really not a ton of card draw. Hunter, no card draw, as you love to bang on about at any given opportunity. So what that means is if you sort of draw a bad opener and your opponent has a better opener, that's just your lot, you know? Like, you play those cards and they weren't good enough, so your opponent just blows you out.
Yeah, that's really true. And outside, as we said, of Druid, which does have access to card draw most of the time, such as now for Jarla, so already looking a little bit better than he did last game, it just does have that sort of dead point at the first few turns for a deck to build up some board presence. And Seiko doing a good job of it so far with a 1 and 2 drop here for his Hunter. But a bit of a gap to fill going forward for him.
Yeah, and Jarla with a much more promising looking hand and was available previously. We might just see this Waste Warden put in some work. I am not going to clarify that statement, by the way, as every caster has done up until this point. I'm just going to trust that you smart viewers at home understand what Waste Warden works on and what it doesn't. I believe in your intelligence, dear viewers.
Mistake number 1. Having the Mount Seller available already with Overgrowth and then the selection of 0 mana cards and cheap cards that will be live as well at that point is looking really good for Jarla, that maybe he skips the Glowfly so the Waste Warden will not get at least immediate impact that would get on a slightly slower game from the Druid player.
I think that Animal Companion gave Seiko at least a decision this turn. Without that draw or another similarly playable card, I think this was always the line, but the Animal Companion just maybe gave Seiko some motivation to hold on to his coin. But obviously this is a very strong development turn nonetheless. Now means if Glowflies do come down, then Seiko can just Waste Warden, blow through all of it, smash hard.
That's it, right. It's not only dealing with the board. Hunter cannot do this forever. So they need to not only dodge the big boards and deal with them, but they need to push damage and finish the game quickly, because as we've seen, Druid right now, as we mentioned earlier, is one of the few decks that can draw a lot of cards, which means it's going to outpace and outvalue the Hunter in the long game.
And serious point, here's the one people don't talk about a lot. I mean, this it's come up at some point in every region, right? Where it's like, oh, Waste Warden is good against Druid. No, it's not. It doesn't kill Tree Ants. Well, it still kills Glowfly Swarm. No one mentions the Mount Seller. These are all beasts too.
That's true, yeah. It's because they're always diving griffins. They've done their job.
Yeah, no. Yeah, fair point. I know better than to argue with the idea that everything is a diving griffin out of exotic Mount Seller. Is that Ironbark even just like a weird play around Waste Warden in some way, or is he just trying to protect his Mount Seller more from the stuff that Seiko has on board? Probably the latter, right?
Yeah, the Mount Seller just dies to the Faceless, right? And even if you then taunt it, it means it just dies to the weapons X. I do like overall just Jarla. I'll say going all in on this Mount Seller has a slight exaggeration, but you know what I mean, like the Crystal Power, just everything going in to make this as big a turn as possible, because he has the Overflow, no fancy ways to activate it for 0, i.e. Kalthaz, but if he can get this off a little bit freely, it puts him in such a great spot for the rest of the game, because again, as I mentioned, he will have cards, and soon, Seiko will not.
Yes. Rottnest Drake, very disappointingly inactive at the moment. Because I think I would take my odds on that Snipe over the Waste Warden here if it was a possibility.
Waste Warden, definitely not a horrible substitute though right now. It does make pretty much everything but the Mount Seller die, and if Jarla has just played that many low-cost spells, how many more does he even realistically have?
Well, he does still have a 5/8. That's a problem.
A warrior always hits.
Seiko's got CMS soon.
Okay. And look at this trade. This trade hurts me. Ugh. No one wants to make that trade. Yeah, Jarla's Ironbark positioning did actually end up super well for him in the end.
Yep. Even gets to trade on the freebie heal on the Mount Seller. Any 0 cut? Oh. Again.
Yep. Where's your Waste Warden now, dummy?
Again, no great reason for me not to Ironbark here.
I think I still like the Ironbarker not Mount Seller plan though, because there's still like Swarm of Locusts. You're a little bit worried about coming down here.
Contradictions.
Also, Zephyrus as well, right? You want 2 awkward targets instead of 1?
Yeah. So the +1 buff is okay. Yeah. If you were making like another 5 attack minion, you're going into like Zephyrus Shadow Earth Ruin right now,
Right.
which would get a bit awkward. But yeah, it seems fine.
It's just that now if it's like Zephyrus Death, well, how does he deal with the rest of it? Whereas obviously if you went big on the Mount Seller, a Death deals with most of the threat.
Yep. That's
You
very
like
true.
this? So now with the trade, and then the swarm and the swing, there's a lot of one attack single like 1/1s going in here, but it's just not enough, is it?
It's 9 damage of clearing power, 10 damage of clearing power. Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't even kill all the auxiliary beasts this time. Just even worse clear than it was last turn.
Jarla is getting probably the most value from a single mount seller I've ever seen in any game. I'm not even exaggerating here. I think this is the best mount seller I've seen.
Really?
In terms of just turn after turn value, normally the mount seller does its
It's only
job.
been 2 turns, Raven.
Okay, well, but honestly, most of the time, mount seller does its job, and then it dies, or it does its job, and then the player just like savage rolls or someone concedes if they can't kill it.
Okay.
Whereas this is just Seiko holding on, but now it's going to be another wave of minions from mount seller.
When you only have 3 digits or less in your legend rank, Raven, people probably care more about games and concede less easily.
Would not know.
He just fesses up to it.
How
No comeback required.
curious.
I tweeted out my legend.
I
rank.
know. I really enjoyed your legend escapades.
It's fun, right? That's what I like to do. So I like to create a narrative and not just be like, "I'm good." Full stop. That's like your tweets. Look at me, I'm cool. Done. I like to create a story. Take the viewer and read it on a journey.
Hold on, that did actually sound like quite a bang. What did you say? Look at me, I'm cool. Full stop. All right, nice.
I think I said good,
So
but
many
Oh, good? Okay.
contradictions.
Got it.
is that the tweet?
That's the tweet.
Okay.
Sands of time run
That'll be
low.
funny in 15 to whatever minutes to delay them. Ooh, the big prime discard, the KT discard. Still, Jarla in a pretty good spot. He gets to shuffle in another prime at some point. Or maybe not, if he just wins. Solar Forest coming down to secure this board. And I think all the locusts in the world, even though there are probably many of them, not going to be enough to face down the irony that is Hunter getting beat up by a Sword of Beasts.
I concede.
Bit of a
Yeah.
clap from Jarla. I think he feels good about that one, doesn't he? With the beating he took earlier on in the day. I think it's just nice for Jarla to think, like, right, okay, I can win the series today, move on, make it to another final day of the week here for Jarla.
Yeah, but now Seiko very much dangling over the precipice, staring down at the pit of despair that is Division B, because he needs to win this series. We keep on hammering it, but it's very, very important. And there have been lots of ifs, buts, and maybes leading up to this point, but it's now starting to crystallize to the point where it's just very definitive statements. Players have to win, and they have to not lose, and Seiko is currently in some serious trouble.
Yeah, I do feel like with the way not only the players, ourselves, and everyone are talking about the difference between Division A and B, when we come to cast it and show it and produce it, we should have just different music, right? There should be very like just downtrodden style music being played out. Maybe the graphics change just a bit more dull. And I don't know. I think everyone could look like maybe look like TJ does when in his bit with Bloody Face. Get the eyeliner out, get the longer hair, and that's what everyone has to look like when they play in Division B. And Division A is just all smiles and fun. It's not that bad. It's just a little bit. Well, it's a bit worse, but it's not that bad. Is my main point here.
Raven, I'm just trying to build a narrative. God, remember how this works?
We told you that's my job.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
You just say you're good. So Jarla does have his Shaman and Paladin left, which means he does have to win with one of the arguably worst decks. But I do think, again, I think that the forms that Jarla has chosen for I don't know why I keep saying forms today. That's just my thing. I'm going to run with it. Of these classes are actually on the better end of the scale than saying Murloc Paladin, Totem, Shaman, Cross Fingers, which I feel like a lot of the players
Let
do.
the hunt
Yep.
begin.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And we see Jarla now bringing out his Shaman, which is another Galakron Evolve Shaman, much more common as we've been seeing in Europe, as Raven was saying. Europe as a region does seem to have dodged the pair of decks of Murloc Paladin and the Totem Shaman. which I'm very much in favor of because I think those decks are very bad, and I think you could do very well to avoid bringing them.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Just going to check out one more time for good luck. Just to see Jarla's Shaman. Yeah, it is pretty much just Evolved Shaman. There are the double Waste Wardens we mentioned earlier. There's the Lurker below I mentioned as well. But other than that... Oh, okay. I guess double Stormforged Axe as well. So there's quite a lot of tech in this list. But still the core of it is get those minions out and get them evolved. Maybe Swampoo's is a consideration because of that Stormforged. And
Yeah,
just
very-
the fact it runs Bog
very
Spine
possible.
anyway.
Yeah.
Moves quickly.
I definitely don't think the other two cards are that key to the game right now.
No, I would tend to agree. I was going to say the argument for one of them would be Spellkin potentially, because then you have like Zephyrus into Wild Growth into 5-drop curve.
Your wish
Seems
is
pretty
my
reasonable.
suggestion.
I kind of like these.
It feels weird not to take Ooze when there are 4 weapons in your opponent. Well, 5 if you count Galacrond in your opponent's deck.
Yeah, 2 of which are like incredibly impactful, right? Like just, you know, the game plan of the deck revolves around these weapons. The curve does make sense.
Curve could have made sense as well. In hindsight, Battle Mage and an Ooze this turn would have looked pretty good.
Yep.
There's the Lurker below. In hand, not going to get so much value right now, of course, a little bit far away, but still. It's there as spot removal. If Jarla chooses so.
You can see why Stormforged Axe has never really found its place in the metagame. It's an effective weapon, but like, just look how brutal it is to Jarla's game plan here. Because the Overload just like, without the Overload, he's just Desert Herring this turn, hoping that, you know, 2 of them stick maybe, and then boom, Bogspine Knuckles, off we go. But that Overload...
Yeah, not fun, is it? I was wondering if there's ever a reason to go for the far sight, but again, that's just slow anyway.
You just can't coin, I don't think.
Didn't choose to swing either. He does have a lot of charges of weapons to get through, but the one thing to keep in mind is Bogspine Knuckles is 5 mana, so it's not like, oh, I'll just swing with Bogspine no matter what, then equip the next one. There's a lot of investment, not only in durability / time, but also just a mana investment in any given turn. So I don't think I definitely don't dislike him not swinging here.
A simple
Max value. Rapid fire. We'll be able to take out those bunnies.
Yeah, Seiko does give up
Preempt.
his Dragon Activator for the Rottnest Drake there by playing the Spellkin first.
Do you think that's reasonable though? Just because it's not often against
Such
Evolved Shaman you have a
choice.
very consistent Rottnest anyway.
No.
I think the only thing maybe to consider was should he have Rottnested instead of Spellkind. I think I actually like that more.
A warden always hits her mark.
Good recognition from Jarla. I think that he just needs to keep the board for as long as possible. Obviously, you could just sit back and hope that you're going to get, like, you know, multiple dragons out of Waste Warden or multiple beasts out of Waste Warden. I think just jamming it there is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, if your opponent's got multiple dragons, you're in bigger trouble than a Waste Warden can probably handle anyway.
Probably true, yeah.
Specifically against Hunter, right? Dragons are quite chunky. Shoot it enough times and it will die.
Finally, we're seeing a Crazed Alchemist get value, Raven. Look at that! The nuts!
Took us 20 years, but we got there.
Yeah.
But now, oh, if only there was a coin, the Lurker below. Oh. Is this just a preemptive Bogspine?
you're going to get Dino Tamer Brand so hard if you do that, though.
Is Jarla going to get Dino Tamer Brand hard regardless, is my question then.
Yes. Yes, he is.
There's
I
no
think
good
that-
way you can prep for it, right?
No, but I think that's what he's searching for. I think that's what this time is being spent on, is can I ever be in a position to deal with Dino Tamer Brand next turn? I think the answer to that question is a resounding no, though.
Of course you can. Lurker below and the swing of the bog spine. And then an insane evolve.
Wait, what's happening?
My point being, it's going to be far-fetched if he actually wants to deal with an AA next
I
turn.
see. He's going to need to find some way to evolve into a walking fountain next turn or something, which doesn't look very possible.
Nope. So I guess the plan might be evolve into taunts next turn instead?
Yeah, I think he just got Knuckles and hope he doesn't have it. I think that's the real plan. We obviously can see that he
Oh.
has.
The kill command as well is making this look pretty good for Seiko. It opens up so many different outcomes now. Unleash, kill command, you know your opponent wants to go wide. And now does Jarla actually save this for afterwards in terms of the Corsair? He can draw, he can still play the rabbits. The hares, I guess. And follow up with a Corsair as a taunt if he needs it.
Blood and plunder.
Oh no, okay.
You are victorious.
Nope,
This time.
not going to be good enough. Jarla went for it, but that was too much to handle there as Seiko just pushed him down. But this is one of the issues you have when some of your answers are a little bit slower. And this, again, is probably a reasonable display of why Evolved Galakrond Shaman is a little, like, not quite strong enough. It's got insane turns. We've seen it previously today. We've seen some of it yesterday. But Bogspine Knuckles, the key card, is a 5-mana and a lot of the time not do much that turn because you have to have some level of either setup or wait until the turn after when you can swing it with a live effect. So it's crazy. I wonder, it wouldn't have helped, right, if he just swung the Knuckles anyway the previous turn. I wouldn't have done it because he swung the Stormforged Axe, right?
He didn't have any minions.
Yeah, no, I mean, just as a weapon was my point, but he'd already swung the Stormforged
Oh no,
Axe.
it was like a
Yeah.
2/2, a 2/1, and a 1/1
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
board
yeah,
or something. It was
I was just
nonsense.
double checking because I think something that some people might do sometimes is always try and save it for minions when you could have actually just used the first swing to soften up the board and have a safer, like, evolve turn then, but not in that instance, so I'm not taking anything away there from Jarla. But it is even 2-2, and Seiko might see some light at the end of the tunnel, as he only needs to win one more game to stay alive in this series, and he wasn't looking too great beforehand, but now he can pick his Druid if he really wants, but I think he might be on his Paladin here, because we've seen some of the trouble Druid can have versus slightly quicker decks, and I don't know if it's got it versus the Galakrond. We've seen it with those Rush minions, it just doesn't seem to do that well.
Yeah, specifically against Evolve Shaman, it just seems like Druid is an absolute disaster. So as weird as it sounds, maybe the Paladin is just his best deck here, but it looks like he's actually going to be going Druid here. So Jarla, no great surprise, sticking on his Shaman. I think this is the matchup that he wanted to see, and we've seen how quickly the Shaman curve can beat down the Druid in this matchup. But this is what Seiko is betting his potential slot in Division A in this year's Grandmasters.
Yeah, most importantly there, some of the, or most of the downsides we've seen of Druid today at least, is just a lack of card draw, but Fungal is in hand ready for Seiko, so he can at least cycle into some cards very quickly in the game.
It's true. He does still have to survive the curve, though. Like, I don't know how much drawing additional cards would have helped some of the Druids in the previous games when the board was just, growing every turn, from 2/2s and 3/3s, and then suddenly the 4/5s start coming down, and every time they do that, they're rushing into your minions and killing them off. Like, it's just such an efficient way to beat down Druid, to, like, pick apart what Druid tries to do.
Yeah, I think it might be just one of those things where the Druid needs to build the big board and have some of it stick, because once they push the Shaman off the board once, they probably keep hold of it, just because the Druid has access to more resources in total. or quicker, should I say. So I think maybe that's just the way I saw it was, if they have more cards, they've got some more removal and some more board building, whereas the Shaman, as we mentioned earlier, isn't drawing tons of cards. So if you push them off once, it might be enough.
That's fair.
I will act as your
That is a very cheap Shield of Galakrond there.
It is.
And already not looking fantastic, is it?
Yeah, it looks like Jarla has chosen to play a little bit mana inefficiently there, as opposed to just, dumping his 4-drop on 4, because of the Starfall inclusion that Seiko does play. So if he'd have played the Devoted Maniac, it would have just been a clean Starfall everything. Now Seiko can either clean up the little guys or just shoot the 4/5 for 5, but either way, it's a much more resilient board against Starfall.
What?
And he knows if Glowfly Swarm comes down, he's laughing his way to the bank. That Waste
Right.
Warden in hand.
And this Starfall, I think, has to be the wide variant as opposed to the Shield of Galakrond, because he has Bog Beam, he has other ways to just deal the rest of the damage. There's a slight fear of Knuckles here, but also I think the fear was similar. Even though the minions would be smaller, they would be numerous. So Knuckles were a problem anyway. It's going to be played now as it comes off the top with the help of Dread Corsair.
He's just at 12, Raven.
And
That's 12.
two fairly solid minions, right?
Yep. He's at
Not
12.
mind-blowing, but
And there's 12 in play. You just beat them up. Like, what has Jarla done? He just played a curve of minions.
Welp. Not got much for you now, Sol, I'll be honest.
So, Seiko
Cons.
does still have, Kael'thas or a Mount Celaturn available to him if he wants to go that route, but again, he can't activate his Iron Barks and Bog Beams, no matter
He can't
how much
build a
extra
board.
mana he gains. Yeah, exactly. No Overflow, no Glowfly, no way to really pop off with Kael'thas.
He needed one more mana, Sol. Why has Druid never got enough mana?
Yeah, can we print some more ramp cards, please?
Can we get that Druid just one mana? This is just straight up Bog Beams
Yikes.
for 3.
Double Waste Ward? Double the power, double the storm, double the Waste Warden, apparently, for Jarla right now.
Oh, not bad.
Those are big.
That's just game, innit? Seiko didn't get to play this game of Hearthstone, but I will say that's sometimes what you get with this Druid deck. You do very little for the first few turns, and if there's not great board building in the mid slash.
Hang on.
Addicted to it.
Am I counting him out?
Yes, you
There's
are.
only 3 spells there, right?
No, there's not. There's 4. Coin, Innovate, Glowfly Swarm, Ironbark, Power of the Wild, Gift of the Wild.
I didn't look at it this way, actually. Aren't I silly?
He makes the Giga board this turn.
Time waits
That's
for
got
no one.
Waste Wardens.
Yeah, they are quite big though. That's the problem.
Yeah, I actually, what was I looking at here? Did I look at Solar Forest or something? I don't know. I missed something here, but this is a very solid turn, a very solid spot by Seiko.
Devoted Maniac and the minion that comes out of it rush as 3/3s, but Waste Warden definitely has that covered in
3 to
terms of
all,
damage to the board, yeah. Although using Devoted Maniac, you could take care of the Kael'thas, but is the Kael'thas your number 1 priority right now? You might just say, you don't have Overflow, therefore I don't care about your Kael'thas this turn.
Yeah, I
Certainly
think the Waste Warden as well makes the other trades decent. Not super clean, but decent. Didn't matter that it hit the Raven, since the Raven's going to die if it trades anyway.
Yeah.
Like this like activates the 2/5 more, you know. Get a clean trade there. The 4-2 goes in. Does he just kill them all off and say, well, okay, trade GK team to this?
I think so. Yeah, I think you just let him have Kalthas. Just say you don't have Fungal Fortunes or Overflow, because I would have seen those.
Or does he leave it up and trade into the Kel'Thas because he has the second Waste Warden?
Oh,
Finish
okay.
off the
Yeah,
Glowflies?
sure. Sure, yeah, that's actually smart. I didn't think about that.
Now Seiko's crazy swipe. Not exactly the most common card in Druid at the moment, but he's going to very cleanly deal with this board if he wants to play.
I supply only the
She's gonna sell
finest
Mount Seller.
creatures.
Okay. What a weird game of Hearthstone. Was this just insane from Seiko?
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I think he is now ahead. As weird as that might seem to say for some viewers watching, I think he is definitively ahead right now.
And funnily enough, because of Seiko's turn,
The fires of
it
vengeance
also
burn
led to
bright.
Jarla not needing to Waste Warden or wanting to, which means he has Waste Warden for the Mount Seller board. It's just a weird sort of swings and roundabout way for the players to sort of constantly counteract each other.
Yeah. Oh! Oh no! Bunnies, no!
Bunny Hopper, if you are currently watching, look away now.
Yep.
Your best mates are going to get wrecked. Even the Crystal Power's good, he can heal up. Keeping that little bit safe, I think that's more valuable and just trade the Mount Seller.
Oh, when it rains, it pours, Raven. Instant mukla.
Well, Galacrond or bust?
Looks about right, yep.
I guess.
Galacrond is all the way up. He's invoked 5 times, I think, so off the top he'd get the huge 8/8s, he'd get lethal damage over 2 with the weapon swinging face.
I guess he has 2 turns for Galacrond, right? Because that was only 14 Psycho 0 cards in hand. Which means it's likely survives for 1 more turn.
It's fair.
Iron Bark. Not card draw, but it is a taunt wall and an extra minion in the way.
If you put it on the Mount Seller, do you stop the 2-turn lethal setup from Galacrond? No, you don't. So yeah, okay, I like this.
Also, if you put it on the Mount Seller, it means that the Rush minions get to it as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. So you make the 9 health, the Rush minion hits into it, but then also like your extra token from the hero power can just rush into it as well and finish it off. The daggers, the claw still gets to go face.
Wow. What a game. That honestly looked very, very over for a long time for Seiko there, but with some extremely solid play.
You are victorious.
He manages to survive. He is going to be still in the tournament so far and still has a chance to book his spot in Division A, whereas Jarla is done. It's always a shame to lose and to be done in a negative way and be knocked out, but Jarla is and already has a spot in Division A, so he's still going to be feeling probably pretty positive in general, right? Again, no one likes to lose, but he's already done his job. He's already done fantastic for the first 3 weeks of Swiss in Grandmasters.
But again, confirming once more, now and forever, that Hearthstone has the best scriptwriters in the business. The 2 players with everything on the line in this group, Pavel and Seiko, do end up clashing in the decider matchup exactly the same as we saw yesterday in Group A, where it was the exact same story at the end of the day. The 2 players still fighting for that Division A spot were against each other in the decider matchup. So Seiko now has a chance to get revenge for what was probably the dumbest series we've seen all week, at least in the European region. Pavel against Seiko take 1. So see if he can do decidedly better this time around.
Yeah, that was the key point. If you have tuned in a little bit late and missed some of the early matches, one, go and watch them. They were actually very funny. But also, Seiko pretty much did not get to play the first match of his day because Pavel just steamrolled him. It wasn't even close. And again, taking nothing away from Seiko, I think then even that game displayed his ability to just see the lines very quickly. But he just had nothing to do. He died. versus Pavel 3 times. So it was very, very rough, but he gets that chance at that rematch. So that is going to be looking pretty good. I believe we are going to be going to a break just to give them a couple of minutes to get ready for the next game. So we'll be right back with the final match of Europe. But remember, there's America's going to be happening after us as well. So we'll be right back with Pavel versus Seiko round 2.